So to start with, what is earned value? When you think about the projects that you run today, you're often looking at them with respect to maybe the schedule. Are you on time? Are you going to deliver this set of activities that you've committed to do? Maybe it's a fixed price engagement. Are you going to deliver on time? And maybe you have milestones that you're working towards. But there's that other dimension, which many of you look at, which is the cost. As you deliver, as you are working through your schedule and the activities and completing them, how are you doing from a cost performance? Are you on schedule? Are you under budget or over budget? Well, earned value is really just a method of looking at project performance on these two dimensions, cost and schedule. Very straightforward. It actually was initiated, earned value, in the government, but specifically for the Department of Defense back in the 60s to really manage some of these very large, hundreds of million, 50 million, billion-dollar projects. And in about 1998, an ANSI standard, the ANSI being the American National Standards Institute, created the initial ANSI standard for earned value management, and you can look it up online. It's ANSI 748, and then it was reaffirmed in August 2002 and June 2007 as ANSI 748B. So if you're curious about those standards and want to go out and Google that, you can find information on those standards. Okay, so earned value is based on 32 criteria in a variety of different areas, and these are the major 5 areas that earned value is tracked against. Your organization, how you organize your project into your work breakdown schedule, how you plan, schedule, and budget. There are a number of accounting considerations associated with earned value. Then there's obviously the analysis and management reports that allow you to inspect your performance from both a cost and schedule perspective. And then it's all about how you manage your baseline, how you update your baseline as you have delays or if you have costs changes and so forth. So these 32 criteria are defined, and Sherry, we do have that document that we might want to send out to the people on this webinar that describes how Uninet can support these 32 criteria. So what we're going to do today is look at a very simple project so we can understand the concept of earned value. So let's take a look at this slide here. What we have, consider this project that is 10 days long. So these little blue squares at the bottom represent days. And let's suggest that we are going to spend our anticipated cost per day is going to be $1 per day. So we have a 10-day project. Our anticipated cost is $1 per day, and we anticipate being finished on the project in 10 days. Okay, so our budget at complete, one of the terms we'll start to talk about, is $10. Okay? So a very simple project. Now obviously projects don't line up this way. They have variable costs across time, but this will allow us to really kind of dig into the different tenets of earned value. So next slide. Let's say the red line now is where we are on the calendar. So you may recall that we started on day 1, and then we're 5 days into the project. We're at the end of the 5th day. So from a schedule perspective, purely calendar perspective, we are 50% of the way through this project. Okay. Let's also, you see these other color down here that goes 1 through 4, the actual cost. Let's suggest that we have spent $4 on this project so far. So we're 50% of the way through the schedule, through the calendar schedule of the project, and we've spent $4 in cost. So what does this tell us about the project? Does it tell us that we're ahead of schedule? Does it tell us that we're under cost? It really tells us almost nothing. All we know is that we're 50% of the way through the calendar schedule, and we've spent $4 in cost, but we have no idea where we are from a percent complete on the project. So we don't know if we're ahead of schedule, if we're over budget or under budget. So that's a problem. So let's take a look at this project again and add a few more dimensions to it. So we have the same blue, which is 1 through 10, which represents the days, if you will, the scheduled days, the calendar days of the project. The second line are the costs that we have incurred up to this point in time. So again, we're after the 5th day, and we've spent $4 in cost. The new dimension we're bringing in is the earned value here. So let's say that we're 60% of the way through the work. So although we're only halfway through the calendar of the project, we've actually accomplished 60% of the work. When you add this dimension to it, you can start to derive a lot of really useful information. So let's take a look at what we can derive from this. If we go to the definitions above, in earned value management, planned value is the cost of the work we anticipated completing at this point. So what is that? It is 5 units. We anticipated halfway through the project having spent, in essence, $5 of cost. That's what we anticipated because we anticipated spending $1 a day on this project. And we're halfway through from a calendar day perspective. But our actual cost is $4. Okay? So what does that tell us? Our earned value is our percent complete, which is 60%, times our budget at complete. Our budget at complete is 10. So we've actually, our earned value is 6 units. Okay? And that's represented by the green boxes at the bottom. So now let's bring in a couple of indexes or indices. We have schedule performance and cost performance. And if you start to really think about this, and you're going to get this presentation after we're done, you can start to really understand what these are representing. So our schedule performance is our earned value, okay, we've gotten 60% of the way through our project, over our planned value. So we've actually earned 6 units. That's how far we've gotten through the project from a percent complete perspective, and we had only anticipated to get to 50%. So our schedule performance index is 1.2. It's above 1. So above 1 means that we're a little bit ahead of schedule. Okay? The cost performance is the earned value, again, 60%, 6 units, over the actual costs. So we anticipated spending $1 a day. So at the point that we were 60% through this project, from a calendar perspective, we anticipated spending $6. But we've only spent $4. So our cost performance is 1.5. Again, above 1, that's a good thing. That means that we're under budget. So based on having not only the schedule or plan value, which is how you've budgeted your resources across a project, how you've allocated them both from a labor perspective and potentially an other direct cost or ODC perspective, by having that, by tracking your actual costs, labor and ODCs, and this is the big question mark here, tracking your earned value or the percentage that you have completed tasks within your project, you can then determine how you're doing both from a schedule performance perspective and a cost performance perspective. So Sherry, I may just stop for 1 second and ask if any questions have come in so far.
No questions so far. They're listening intently.
Okay. So everything is so crystal clear, I guess. So let's keep going. So this is one example. So this is the project I want to be on, the one where we're ahead of schedule and under budget. Obviously, that's not the case in many projects. So let's take a look at another project. In this case, and we're always going to be, I have it marked, we're 50% from a calendar perspective through the project, and our costs at this point are $3. And we're 40% of the way through the work, represented by their earned value here. Okay? So you'll notice that our schedule performance is below 1, meaning we're behind schedule, and our cost performance is above 1, meaning that from a cost perspective, we're actually spending less money than we anticipated. So what does this tell you about the project? It tells us that we're behind schedule and under cost, so we can apply more resource, and if more resource can pull the schedule in better, then we can do that and still stay within the costs, the anticipated or scheduled costs of the project. So that is what it's telling us. So, each project has its own requirements. Their schedule may be the most important thing. There may be some hard deadline that you must achieve. So at all costs, you're going to meet the schedule performance, and you'll sacrifice some of the cost performance for that. But those are decisions that each individual project manager will have to make. Let's look at one more. In this case, this is the case, the no-win case. We are halfway through the project, again by calendar. Our costs are more than we anticipated at this point in time, And we're actually right on in line with what we anticipated completing halfway through the project, where 50% of the work has been completed. So you'll see that the schedule performance here is exactly 1, meaning we're right on schedule, and we're a little bit over budget. We spent more than we anticipated. So we just potentially underestimated the cost of this project, and it's just the way it is. Okay. So those are a few scenarios of a very simple project, just to give you an understanding of what these different metrics are, what these different definitions are for earned value. Okay, so again, this is just a reiteration of those definitions. So the planned value is often called the budgeted cost of work scheduled, and again, it's based on our schedule and how much we had anticipated spending at this point based on the current date. The actual costs are just that, the actual cost to date of your project. The budget at complete, or BAC, represents the program or project budget, and then the earned value is the budget at complete times the percent complete on the activities of the project. Okay, so let's move on. So now Uninet, so everybody on this call is a Uninet customer, so you've probably seen a lot of these screens. Some of you may have set up a work breakdown structure in Uninet, others may not, but Uninet supports a work breakdown structure where you can have a hierarchical setup of your task, and you can see that we have this project support as a primary task with these subtasks under it and so forth. When you first go into your task list in Uninet, you're probably very familiar with this, where it shows you the task names and then whether it's active, inactive, begin date, and end date. Very simple view of those tasks. Now hopefully most of you also are aware that if you go back to the search tab of that same task list, there is a wealth of other attributes that are available for you to display in the list. And they are all listed here. So these are all the task attributes at your disposal can be displayed here. You also have the ability to filter on which tasks you want to see, either by name or by these metrics here, or by these constraining elements here. So if you just want to look at suppress completed tasks, you can do that. You can suppress inactive tasks. And then down here, there is also the ability to display any actuals against these tasks, along with calculated percent completes and calculated estimated totals with all this other information. Okay? So based on what you select, if we then go back to the task list, we now see a much greater number of columns representing those other values. So although this is just a method of listing tasks within your system, it's also a mini report in that you can also see a number of other attributes of each of these tasks. Okay? So another very useful feature of the task list is the double edit. The double edit pencil here in this red circle means edit all of these tasks in a single edit window. And I'm going to go to the next screen and it'll show you how that happens. So by clicking on the double edit, we can now edit any of these values at the same time. So when you're working on a project where you're supporting earned value, your goal is to set up the work breakdown structure with these tasks that are granular enough to identify a relatively small work unit. You know, there are a lot of different methods out there. You might suggest that no more than a 40 or 80 hour task be that's the largest task you can have within your work breakdown structure, so that any one task, if you identify the percent complete, does not bias the overall view of your reports. So in this view, we have the opportunity to put in percent completes at each of these different task levels. And this might be done in a combined project meeting that you have once a week, where you're sitting down and you're working with your team to identify the percent complete on each of these tasks. You might use a 0-100% rule, that only after the task is complete do you set it to 100%. Otherwise, it's always at 0%. You might have a 0, 50, 100 percentage also. But the bottom line is this screen is a method of facilitating the entry of your percent completes, which again are critical to the earned value reports, because it is these percent completes that it draws from to calculate how you're doing from a schedule performance and a cost performance. Okay? Okay. So what we've covered so far is we've seen the dynamic views that are available within the task list. Okay. We've seen that you can do a multi-edit view of these tasks, which some of you may have already been aware of, but I use this all the time for tracking projects that we manage in Uninet. You can see not only your budgets, but the actual work performed. It's sort of a mini report in this list. And it also does some calculations. I'm going to go back one screen. These calculated percent complete is kind of giving you an idea of what the percent complete is based on the actual hours worked against the calculated estimated total. So if there was a linear relationship between the hours worked and the percent complete, it would be 43%. But in reality, that's not really the case. The percent complete here is one that is hand-keyed or entered by your project management team to represent the true percent complete of this task. But this might be useful for some information about where you stand from an hours perspective. Okay. Okay, so next, we're going to take a look at a couple reports in Uninet in a minute, but there are reports in Uninet that will give you a point-in-time analysis or a kind of a time phase analysis of how you're doing on a project. So for instance, if you just want to see how you're performing at this point in time in Uninet from an earned value perspective, you can run reports that will show you that. We also have reports that show you how you are performing from the cost and schedule performance on a monthly basis, if that's how you want to set it up. And the way in which you do that is to save budget snapshots. A budget snapshot is the storing or recording of all the budgets, percent completes, begin dates and end dates of all your tasks or projects within the budget tabs of those two entities in the database. You do that under budget snapshots here within the context of the project. So you look up the project, you go to budget snapshots, you go to manage, and you can save them. Okay? So you can save a budget snapshot of all your tasks and budget within the database at a point in time. So in order to see these kind of time-phased reports, you capture it, let's say, on a monthly basis. Maybe it's the last day of the month. You capture a budget snapshot. Next month, budget snapshot. This allows you to go back in time and see what your performance was on those dates. Okay, and we're going to look at a report here in a second. And here it is. So here is one such report. And what we're showing here are the schedule performance index, which is the yellow line, and the cost performance index, which is the blue line. Now, from the prior diagrams, you may recall that a schedule or cost performance that is equal to or above 1, here's 1, indicates that you're ahead of schedule or under budget. As the numbers drop below 1, it indicates that you are behind schedule or over budget. So let's take a look at this diagram, this time phase diagram that we see here. Each of these points in time are a saved budget snapshot, okay? And you can see I've done it in January. It looks like I'm doing it weekly here, okay, to give you a feel. So as what I'm observing here with respect to the cost performance is my cost performance at least decreased here, but over time it's going down, which means that I'm a little bit under budget here and I'm getting to be a little bit over budget here. But what you'll notice is that there's a direct correlation, at least in this project, of when I'm spending more money. I'm spending more money. Maybe I brought in an additional resource on the project so that I can boost the schedule. My schedule performance is going up. So this is a pretty typical thing that you would see. As my cost performance decreases, meaning I'm spending more money, my schedule performance is increasing. So right about here, they're both getting pretty close to 1, which means about right here I'm on schedule, but I'm a little bit over cost at this point in time, and maybe that's okay for this project. So if you take advantage of the budget snapshots in Uninet and get into a rigor, a process with your project management team, you will have access to this report. Okay. Okay. So now for the earned value report. So whereas the last report kind of showed us our performance over time, this is a snapshot of our performance as it stands right now based on the date range that we put in. And what this is doing is it is showing me all of the different elements of earned value against all of the tasks that I have displayed here. So you'll notice here are my percent completes right here. And then coming across, we have our plan value. So you may recall that the plan value is the amount of cost we anticipated at this point in the schedule. So we anticipated spending $5,400 at this point in the schedule. Okay? Our earned value is $4,500. So based on being 75% of the way complete on this task, okay, our earned value is $4,500. So in reality, what we're seeing here is that we plan to have earned a little bit more than we actually have. So we're a little bit behind schedule on this from a cost perspective. Okay? And our actual cost of work performed is here. So we've actually spent $3,600. Okay? So from all this information, you can start to see our SPI and CPI. So our schedule performance is a little weak. We're a little bit behind schedule, but our costs, as you can see, are low. So we anticipate that we could apply a little bit more resource to this project to get back on schedule. Okay? Now we're showing this at an individual task level, but we also have the total roll-ups here at the bottom. Okay? So this is one of the standard earned value reports that is available in Uninet today, along with the prior chart that we showed, which shows the time phase information. Okay. In 9.5, this is the latest release. It was 9.5 that is currently out. It was delivered last, I think, January, February. We now support the ability to show burden costs within your system. And I'm sure that most of you out there know what I am referring to by burden costs. It is all of your direct costs with all of your overhead, G&A, fringe applied to those, both for your labor and for other direct costs on the project. And if you've set up the ability to manage burden costs in Uninet in your system, you may have done that. Many of the customers out there today may have done that. You have 3 different rates that you can apply to these calculations, either target, provisional, or actual rates. So you simply choose these options when you run the report, and it will leverage those rates when you display the report.